talking about doomsday and global issues, we'll go to our second topic. This is the green revolution coming for the programmatic market, and we'll be right back. We are now talking about the green revolution coming for the programmatic market. I'm here with Nils Lind and James Jackson. I'm Stanislav Kaschiyski, and just let me go through the topic real quick. Basically, I think it's coming top to bottom. It started with advertisers that wanted to optimize more and more for their work to get greener and greener. You know, it kind of makes sense because we already have like Tesla trucks and Volvo trucks that are electric being utilized by different brands out there. We have Nike producing ecological shoes. And it makes sense that the marketing and the PR departments get together and say, we need to make our advertising greener. But this is a task that goes down to the DSPs, and the DSPs were like, but we have a lot of queries from a lot of different SSPs. So now we are at the point where International Advertising Bureau is combining forces with Scope 3, a data company that tries to utilize where the carbon footprint is happening, and with AdNet Zero, which is the advertiser consortium that is bringing this to the programmatic market. And it's only step 2 out of 5 of what they want. And at some point, I guess it will also, in fact, affect publishers. But right now, it's mostly about what's happening on the SSPs market. So, Nils, do you want to say what are your thoughts on this? And do you believe that the SSPs can go greener just based on understanding where their cost impact is?
So the entire topic is kind of complex in itself, since the industry is complex, basically on what is happening underneath of it. Now, there's one kind of positive thing that is playing to it, which at the same time is a sad thing, that is that consolidation has been happening for a long time. It keeps happening, meaning there's less players in the market that are transacting bigger and bigger volumes, which is adding or improving in most terms the efficiency, and with that reducing the amount of carbon emissions and otherwise, or basically waste from transacting those advertisements. But at the same time, we still have new companies popping up using different kind of methods, being everything but clean, and this has always been happening. The entire kind of incentive of this industry is kind of misaligned to be a degree that still, if you send more requests out, you're going to make more revenue, although you're selling the same amount of inventory. And that always leaves like a space open, especially for smaller companies that want to kind of push into the market, or other companies from different markets that want to get into this one. Where one easy way to do it is just to be more aggressive than others are, sending more requests, creating more waste, but still from this kind of waste, there's like a little bit of an upside for them to capture more market. And I think this is really like the difficult part. And at the same point in time, there are also multiple big companies in this market that kind of need to protect their position, their stance in it. They cannot just fully switch to like some kind of framework which would put them at risk. So that they are always, or most likely gonna stay to be like these kind of gardens, thinking of, for example, Amazon doing its own bidding server side, but being fully integrated with pretty much like exactly the same demand as it is running through pre-bid, as it is running through open bidding, as most of the SSPs are reselling to again, and so on. So it's like, everyone that wants to have kind of a piece of it, and everyone is like in this industry are most revenue driven. It's just, necessary to some degree.
You're painting a picture, which is kind of accurate, where a single bid for one ad on one publishing website from one user goes to 15 to 20 SSPs or coming from private, then we have 10 to 15 SSPs, and some of them are the same coming through Amazon. Then we have 5 to 10 or 15 SSPs from open bidding. We can leave out Adecco now out of this because it has more direct type of work. And some of these SSPs are then transferring to different SSPs as a reseller. It's easy to see. If you just open a random website and go to its ads.txt, you'll see a bunch of resellers in there. And in the end, they all appear to, I'd say, not that many DSPs and not that many advertisers. And that is generating a lot of spam in the industry, which kind of, in the majority of cases, if we take that single bid in 40 or 50% of the cases, the ad won't even be viewable. In 50 or even 90%, it depends where you are. You won't even receive a response from that DSP, from the DSP through all of the partners in there. And this is a lot of spam for auctions to work, but what could be a possible way to get out of it? Do you think, James, do you think that Trade Desk, OpenPath, or consolidation, or just in the end of the day, it will come down to the publishers who will be asked, remove any resellers from your ads.txt so that we can send you greener ads as a advertiser?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of green marketing, green programmatic advertising, is it's just such an interesting and complex problem, and it's gonna be interesting to see how the market straightens this out. You've got some really interesting tensions on the user side. Users want anonymity. They don't, they want this, they don't want their data being sold. They're not exactly sure what that means a lot of the time, but they don't want their data being sold and data being tracked. At the same time, they want free content, advertising supported, an advertising supported marketplace that allows them to look at, some amount of content for free. On the other side, of course, you always have the buyers wanting to have more accurate, more targeted, buys, more efficient buys. And then, you have these sort of, middle tier players like Trade Desk trying to do things like OpenPath. It's the thing, I think the thing that we sort of have to see how it works out is what does the user demand really like? What does the user demand really end up looking like? I know we're going to talk about Google at some point on one of these, like the demand side of this just dictates everything. If there's going to be a user market, an advertising supported public marketplace, then you're going to have a lot of these incentive structures for bid inflation and for competition. That's just the bottom line. If the market, at the same time, the market could make the market writ large, IAB and everybody else could make some really good decisions and really could make itself, a very green marketplace, which would be, amazing to be a part of. I think that is very possible that we could see over the next couple of years through some of the consolidation and some of the standardization of markets.
Oh, so consolidation is one thing. Then we have optimizing the path. And we also have the understanding, so the lack of understanding where exactly carbon emissions being produced. And if it goes down to just some companies buying solar panels so that they can have greener energy in their media servers, would that be an efficient way to combat this? Or is it something that we need to rethink in the way the advertising industry is working, following a greener path? Nils, what do you think?
You're on mute, sir.
Like, to take like one kind of step back, like, I think the difficult part really is attributing where was kind of inefficiencies are happening in order to be able to optimize around them. But in order to be able to measure that, it basically all traces back to the publisher side, who are in control of how the inventory is being sold, at least to some degree, especially since ads.txt being around, they have a lot more control over that than they had before. But at the same time, to measure that properly, one needs to know like how much engagement does a publisher really have. So the publisher would need to share that, but again, in a way that is like trustworthy. Or we would need to have some kind of way where, for example, the browsers are providing information as to how much traffic each kind of publisher has, how much engagement time. And then based on that kind of data in combination, it can be measured who is how efficient or less efficient, and advertisers can use that to push their budget more in the directions of where it is more efficient overall. But the big, really difficult thing is that right now there's like no way to really get the data. Sure, we cannot look at the ads.txt records, but they're not going to be in any way fair, because you might have 50 lines, but half of them is from a video player that is not competing on the display side, and so on. And it's no way to tell them really apart what is like unique, what is not unique. So
if I'm understanding correctly, you think the problem is just one of measurement at this point, being able to measure and attribute the carbon footprint of the different players. That's the real first hurdle that you see.
Yeah, because unless this is available, everyone can game the system easily. And even if it is available, it needs to be something that is somewhat kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could, but you could, to Stan's, question, I mean, I think you could imagine markets that look a lot like the market looks now and have them be much greener. Still have a lot of the same, meet a lot of the same needs that the market would have, right? Like, you could see, and this requires a lot to happen with like, whatever happens with Google, right? But you could see a place, and browsers are a really interesting place to start, where the browsers, through some sort of flock-like mechanism, standardize the data on the user account, gave the user some control over that data. And once you have that identity fix in place, this is the identity data that everybody can work with, then you can see how a more efficient market, you could pass that through to a pre-bit server like the setup, which would then all of a sudden be an open marketplace for everybody, where anybody could kind of bid on the data to some extent. I mean, I think a lot of our inefficiency comes from a lack of centralization here. Like in some ways, like, we need somebody to fill, maybe IAB, somebody else to fill that sort of that void and create a common marketplace that we could all plug into, and then we could drive real efficiency across the board. And then, Stan's point earlier, then just putting solar panel on the roof does pay for it. And the only real carbon footprint you have is that last mile between the web server and the web server and the end user. And it's, and the green footprint is really on the end user at that point.
I would add that there is, besides the pipe optimizations that are needed, I'd say that there is a more abstract concept of supply and demand thing on the market that we need to address. And I'd say that a lot of people that buy ads, especially in a bit bigger companies, they are not working that much about the quality of the ads they are serving. They are more focused on the quantity. So in the end, if you report to your board or if you report to your manager, I've got that many impressions going, I've got that many revenue flowing for that, I've reached a broader audience, you're gonna work better than if you said, I've got this budget and I've tried to spend it on a particular set of people, and we see that many conversions because conversion marketing is working for e-commerce as an example, but it's not something that's happening at the big advertising companies, and it kind of generates more and more demand for cheaper ads that are happening through many different websites for many users that are seeing 5 or 10 ads. And if in the end we get to a point where we can sell only one ad per page view, but it's the ad that this user needs to see, and it's the ad that will pay 5 or 10 times more than 5 other ads, I think that's a better way of addressing the issue that we're having at hand. And it's coming both from being for publishers being greedy to get more and more out of programmatic. And don't get me wrong, I'm trying to understand how publishers can earn more, and it's the normal way of things. And advertisers being ready to reach more impressions and more people out there without taking that much into consideration about viewability, CTR, conversions, and all of that.